And you mentioned something interesting that I first want you to define what it is if our listeners don't know what it is. So what is dark social? Sounds really mysterious.
Yeah. Well, it was mysterious for me for a while when I started learning the phase or hearing the phase and trying to understand what it is. But, dark social is when people share through, basically they're sharing your content through private channels like messaging apps, emails, or direct messages, making it hard for marketers to track where the traffic is coming from. So it's a major way that people share links and information, but it often shows up as direct traffic in analytics, which leaves a lot of sharing activity hidden. And that's kind of why it's called dark social, because people are interacting. Usually because people are telling you. When you go to engage with people, they say, yes, I heard from so-and-so, or I saw your article, but you didn't know they saw your article because there was no like or there was no comment maybe on it, but they saw it. And it's very, very hard to see it through attribution.
Right. How did you even come to understand or how that would apply to some of the content you have?
Well, so as the CEO, for many years, again, this would be where I would say I've made some mistakes. We didn't think of ourselves so much regarding how we needed to market ourselves. So to change the way we marketed ourselves, I had to become a marketer, which means I had to understand, learn. I went to school for business and a focus on finance, right? I graduated and my first job in manufacturing was as a financial analyst before I ever sold equipment and parts. So I have a very objective mindset. I never thought I was a marketer or creative. And that's what I perceived all marketers was just that creative piece. And, that could never be me, right? So I had to start following podcasts, learning, reading books, and that's where the dark social started to become a term that I became aware of, especially as we set out with a very specific strategy back in 2019 that we were going to be really thought leaders in the space, and we were going to take the lead on educating our market on why these tools were necessary for survival in the future. If people want to thrive, they are going to need these solutions. And really the future of parts and equipment support is going to be online because we're all walking around with these devices. So we, in our effort to get very strategic about how we were going to start educating the market through this adoption of digital technologies, we set out to have blog posts, to do podcasts, to do webinars, to have a social presence, have a social page for Gen Alpha Technologies, but not just Gen Alpha, but myself, and to actually share posts and share information and be thoughtful about, what people would be looking at. And once we started doing all of that, we also set KPIs and measurements against our results for all of that. And that's where, we saw that our following was going up. That was a measure we could see. Sometimes we could see more hits to our website, but more often than not, we were just hearing from people that they were seeing our content, but we couldn't see anywhere in our measurement that they were seeing it. And that's when I heard somebody talking about dark social, I said, okay, that's the phenomenon that's going on. So the way that we have started to kind of exercise it in our activities and to be more intentional about leveraging dark social is to create content that can be shareable, that is easy to digest and simple to understand and easy to pass along. So, so that social side that maybe you're not seeing, but can easily be happening behind you, it is actually happening. So that's kind of what we're doing. It's still very new for me. It's even difficult for me somewhat to describe, but we're learning through it, and we know there's something out there. And if we just keep doing the good work of educating and informing, the feedback keeps coming in. We know it adds to our credibility as an organization. And those people who do business with us say it had an impact in the process.
Interesting. Yeah, and that's so good. One of the manufacturers I work with, we did this multi-year content marketing, our video value bomb strategy, right? So it's a lot of monthly video content with articles, with some other goodies in as well. And obviously we can measure YouTube views and some of the other analytics that are easy. But like you said, for instance, one example is they have a pretty robust sales team that would, send these out for, pre-sale calls, post-sale calls, or in-person meetings. And sometimes those weren't measurable because they were done through a PowerPoint presentation or, something that was kind of, in a way, offline or not, directly tied to some analytics software. Mm-hmm. And so it's almost like the analytics software you have that you can see, that's your foundation. But you also know there's this, top layer of the cake that is still good.
Yes.
Right? It's still delicious.
Yes.
It's, harder to measure and some of those things.
Yeah.
What is your recommendation to companies that are maybe new to the whole concept of dark social? And, how do they better understand that? How do they work within what's going on there on the dark social side of things? Like what thoughts do you have to kind of better help, companies adjust their viewpoint or perspective on what's going on?
Yeah. The thing that I would say is for any company that is starting a new strategy and taking a thought leadership approach, I know that word can sometimes be a little daunting to people or turn people off, but really it's having intention to share good information to the industry that you serve. And when you become very intentional about that and you take a leap, and you start doing podcasts and you do webinars and you post clips and you're sharing information, in the beginning, it will feel like it's not working. And that's where you have to have the patience, because dark social is likely happening, but you're not seeing it in the engagement where they might be reading all of the stuff or watching or listening, but you have no way to always know that they are doing that. Have the patience, be consistent. Consistency is the key. You have to just continually keep showing up, achieving your own goals, keep besting your own goals, and believe in the process, and you will eventually find the feedback that comes to you. Like, as you just said, I see your content. I know it's out there. I've seen it, and but Jeff, you're not always engaging with the content, right? And that's okay. You're a busy person. I have to also understand that I've put it out there. We as an organization have created something we believe in. Now we're just going to let it work for us. But sometimes you won't see the results immediately. And that's the dark social piece that I think people give up too soon. Oh, we tried that. But because they didn't see the immediate things that you can measure right there. But wait until you have that order that comes in and you ask them, what did you ask your customers? Can you tell us a little bit about the process of deciding to go with our organization? And often we found you to be a credible source in the marketplace. And, that means everything to us.
Totally. It reminds me, just this year, I worked with a company that I came in contact with, I want to say about 8 years ago. It might have been even more. And, never talked, never did anything. And then, sometime several months ago, they reached out, engaged, we're working together. And that was an in-person situation. I think I was speaking at an event or something like that. But same thing. I mean, think about you and me, but also the listener. Like as I scroll LinkedIn or other social platforms, I might comment on some of them, but not everybody.
Sure.
But yet they're in our brain, right? And I've had that too, where a company, in a way, they kind of stalk you, they pay attention, they let you build rapport and showcase your expertise. And then at the right time, they're like, oh yeah, that Kris Harrington's been putting out some really great content. We need to reach out to her. Mm-hmm. And so it might not be a purposeful thing that they're ignoring you, kind of quote unquote, until that right time.
Yes.
But you're planting seeds of success in their mind. And so, yeah, that's hugely important. And having a library of content, I call it the snowball effect, right? It gets bigger and bigger as you create more and more. So put it on your website and LinkedIn and social and YouTube and all these places so that your chances will only increase, right? It's like, if you put it on only your website, that's great, but that's not the only place.
Yes. Yeah, I found that timing is everything, Jeff. I'm so glad that you mentioned timing because, it's so often that people do need the services that we provide. They're just not ready yet. There are so many competing projects inside businesses, and there are priorities, and there are urgency, things that urgently have to get done before they get to the next thing. So while they're going to get to you and your solution at some point, the timing isn't right now. But if you keep being consistent and they keep seeing you, when the time comes for them, you're the one that they remember. It's your organization, it's your brand that stands out. And that's true for all brands.
Exactly. And we've all had either done this ourselves or had other people do it to us. Hey, Jeff, just checking in. How's that proposal? Are you ready to move forward yet? So that's one option.
Yes.
Or, the newsletter, like what you're doing, you're giving value, so it's not this ask, hey, ready to work together? It's like, here's something that you might find of value. That's a much better stay in touch than, hey, checking in, And so it does a similar thing, but in a positive.
Yes.